think this is the Bitcoinization of traditional finance, and it's an extension of that. It's obvious we're going to see products and services that are built out around Bitcoin that we can't even imagine at this point in time. But what we're doing is we're drawing a bridge to a new system using the financial services and products that we're familiar with, because that's the only reference point that we have at this point in time. So I think as Bitcoin grows up and gets more sophisticated, the products and services around that are going to continue to evolve. And the thing I love about and spend a lot of time thinking about is the Bitcoin lending. And I look at this and think we're going to see a whole host of range of services and products built out around this space, because ultimately, when you understand Bitcoin, you never want to sell your Bitcoin. You want to hold on to that for as long as possible, and you want to figure out unique ways of adding to your pile of Bitcoin. And there's basically a hero's journey in Bitcoin that everyone goes through it. You start off with a little bit, you add a lot to it, then you start looking around and comparing Bitcoin to all of your other investments. And then once you've gone through that whole process, you then start looking at your home and thinking, well, is this really worth it? Should I sell this to buy more Bitcoin? Because what's the point of paying land tax and maintenance and all the rest of it, the mortgage on the property? And then you go through and realize, hang on a sec, I want to get more Bitcoin, but I'm kind of tapped out. And this is the game we play at the same time, trying to live life and have experiences that we can enjoy and celebrate for the rest of our time. So I look at this and think these services that are being built out and the lending products are a way for hodlers to remain hodlers for a longer period of time. And I'm all for all forms of lending in this space. I think it's very important to understand the risk, but at the same time, this is going to be a forcing function to see the price of Bitcoin go up dramatically, because if everyone's borrowing on their Bitcoin and no one's selling it, then what's actually happening? It's just creating a supply squeeze that is going to push the price higher through time.
Is that what you're seeing? People are reluctant to sell because they just don't have an option. Like I honestly, I wouldn't even know if Bitcoin is tomorrow at like 50 million. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll buy some things that I always wanted to buy, but this is not a lot. Like I don't have a lot of wishes also. Like I'm like, yeah, what do I need it for really? And then I'm like, okay, but do I want to diversify? Like diversify in what? I don't even know what I would diversify in, or like, should I buy real estate? Yeah. I don't know. Why should I buy real estate? I can rent. Like why should I buy any other assets? Like the other assets just bring me more work. Like Bitcoin doesn't bring me any work.
Well, it's really interesting you say that. I think that's a logical conclusion to the end of what lies ahead of us, that I think everyone gets to that point. And what you've just described there is effectively the demonetization of the property and the stock market. And as more and more people get more and more wealth into Bitcoin, that is the logical end conclusion of their thoughts. Why would I want to hold stocks? Why would I want to hold property when both of those are going to drastically underperform Bitcoin over the next 10 to 15 years? If I'm even call it a tenth right on what's happening in the next 15 years, that's a 100x increase in the next 15 years in the price of Bitcoin. Do you think your stock portfolio or your property portfolio is going to go up 100x in the next 10 years? I can't see that happening. Not with the current debt levels across the globe. We're literally indebted up to our eyeballs. Credit growth is slowing, GDP is slowing. Yes, there's going to be a boom in AI, but how is that going to filter down to the mums and dads who are actually going to be buying those properties and buying those stocks? I think it's going to be a very unequal distribution of wealth. And it's funny, I look at Bitcoin on top of everything else that it is. I actually think it's the ultimate hedge against getting AI wrong, because ultimately at the end of the day, they're going to have to require a form of money that's incorruptible by people. And the only incorruptible money out there is Bitcoin for them to use. So ultimately the ultimate AI play, I think, is actually just buying Bitcoin and sitting on your hands.
Does this change Like I'll preset that if I buy a house, I have to care for that. Like, and even if I hire someone to do it, like I have to care for the guy that I hired. If I buy a boat, I have to care for it. And even though if I hire a guy that cares for the boat, I have to manage the guy that does the boat. The same with a car, the same with anything that you might want to buy. And then we have like stocks, and we have maybe other financial assets, and none of them are performing as good as Bitcoin. None of them bring me any value. They just bring me more work and less performance. I'm like, then I just have Bitcoin. Does Bitcoin kind of change our lives from more towards renting things, and we own Bitcoin, but like we rent a lot of other things? Or because I also do see a lot of Bitcoiners really wanting to buy their own home and stuff like that, and own those things again.
I think sort of laying or drawing on some experience in giving advice around um, or investment advice around personal matters when it comes to buying a home and things like that. I think each individual is unique and will come up with their own framework for assessing this. But ultimately, I'll distinguish between a personal and investment decision. For personal decisions, there is nothing that will talk someone out of a rational investment decision. So I look at that and think, one of the things that Bitcoin gives us is time and the focus on how important family is, and generating those memories and experiences with our family and friends is of the utmost importance. Now, can you do that successfully renting? Yes, you can, but you've got a much higher probability of assuring that all of those experiences are great if you own the property, or you own the lake house, or you have X, Y, or Z that you're going to create those memories on an ongoing basis with, and have some conformity and continuity with it. So I look at that and think there comes a point in time in every Bitcoiner's life where I think they've got enough Bitcoin and they want to start creating those memories and have those opportunities with family and friends that they're going to create lasting memories. And quite frankly, you can't go to your grave with your Bitcoin. You can't take it with you. So you may as well spend it or give it to someone who's going to spend it in a way that is, in line with your values.
And Bitcoin might come. It's actually interesting. Do you think, like, when do you think there's the point of Bitcoin maturity, of where Bitcoin already sucked most of financial energy in there, and of course there will be still growth there as humans get more effective, but is this maturity time then this time where maybe Bitcoiners are like, yeah, okay, Bitcoin isn't growing as fast, maybe it makes sense to like buy some stocks again, invest in other things, and maybe, oh yeah, I can buy my dream house, and for like just like 5% or 2% of my portfolio now, because Bitcoin has gone up to over 100 million, as Peter said.
I think it's all a personal preference thing, and these moments in time will come for everyone. And it's ironic. The only thing you have to do is successfully hold your Bitcoin. It sounds so simple and so easy to do, but it's the hardest thing in the world to actually complete. And this is coming from someone who's been in Bitcoin for circa 9 years, nearly 10. Um, it sounds so simple. It's such a simple promise. Just hold your Bitcoin for 10 years. Don't do anything with it, and you'll wake up on the other side of it fabulously wealthy. And not many people can do that. It's very, very difficult.
So the Bitcoin advisory is also now soon getting 10 years old. Are you celebrating?
Well, it was in a different incarnation early on, and it's, I guess, in the branded of the Bitcoin Advisor, has been around just over 2 years now, or nearly 2.5 years. But we've been giving advice on Bitcoin for 10. Um, are we getting ready to celebrate? I think every day is a celebration. Like each day, and I've got to say, this is the really fun part for me, is we get to help just a wide range of clients into Bitcoin who would otherwise never invest in Bitcoin or self-custody their Bitcoin. And to me, that's the really fun part, where, on a daily basis, we have conversations with baby boomers who are downsizing, huge homes, walking away with tons of cash, and they're looking at the stock markets, they're looking at investing in property, and they're coming to their own conclusion that that might not be the best place for their investment money. And they're actively seeking us out to say, hey, we want to do Bitcoin. We want to do it the right way. Can you help us do it where we're not going to hurt ourselves? And to me, I can't tell you what a buzz that is, seeing, 65, 70, 75-year-old people go down this road, knowing what's awaiting them, because we've all been down, we've all had similar shared experiences in this Bitcoin rabbit hole. I've got to say, this is the excitement that really I get a lot of juice out of from a work perspective, to see and know what's ahead of them, and what they're going to find out.
That's so crazy. And going through the cycle of seeing someone being into Bitcoin for like a cycle or 2 cycles, like 4 to 8 years, and seeing how life changing that can be for someone. That's magical. I don't have to live a lot of people, because I myself just in for a little bit longer than a cycle since 2020. So, but I've seen some friends that have been in Bitcoin almost right at the start when I came in, because I said like, hey, like this year could be nice, and they're like, oh yeah, okay. And seeing their development, makes me really bullish for people adopting Bitcoin on so many different levels. A question that comes more and more up in the community now is, will 2026 be a down year? And I always said, yeah, like probably Bitcoin cycles won't change so quickly. But the more and more I see, I'm like, I don't see any bad news coming on our horizon. At the same time, I see more and more people buying Bitcoin. I don't know. I have a hard time believing that 2026 will be a down year. How do you see the cycles and the cycle theory?
I agree with you. I think we're going to have a prolonged cycle, and I think the diminishing block reward is a huge indicator, because it's relatively insignificant now. Um, it doesn't have the sell pressure that previously existed. We've got so much demand from the Treasury companies, from the ETFs and day-to-day hodlers, dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin. I look at this and think it is a fundamentally different market. I think we're going to have muted peaks and muted troughs, and it's going to be a much further extended cycle. And I think, I could be wrong on this, but I just don't think we're going to have the significant impact that the halvings used to have. It's going to be a morphed system, process, cycle moving forward that we're going to look at, and it's going to be difficult to understand, because there's just so much capital sitting on the sidelines that can really influence this market. And a significant change that we've seen from previous cycles, we now have the endorsement from the world's most powerful government. Now, I know no Bitcoiner on earth really gives a shit about the government, but guess what? Every non-Bitcoiner, and there's more non-Bitcoiners than Bitcoiners, they do care about what the government thinks. And now you've got the world's most powerful government endorsing Bitcoin, wanting to have a strategic reserve, create a regulatory framework around it. All of a sudden, Bitcoin has now been demystified for 99% who aren't here yet. So I look at that and think that's going to have a significant impact, and that's going to be a much more prolonged investment cycle that we may not be familiar with and we haven't seen yet.
I agree. People in the Bitcoin community underestimate how much it means for the non-Bitcoiners that the government is behind Bitcoin, because a lot of questions I still get, maybe because I live in Europe, like, oh, what if the government bans Bitcoin? I'm like, uh, uh, and if this is completely out of the way, where this is no longer even an option because it's not an option, then people are like, oh yeah, oh, the government is behind it. Oh shit, like I really have to buy it. And then they get educated, and then they realize, oh, it cannot even be banned and all those things. So I learned a lot from my Bitcoin journey, and I definitely wasn't a Bitcoiner when I got into Bitcoin, and the journey was a slow transition in there, mindset wise, but also value wise, and just like adopting the Bitcoin mindset to a certain extent. It takes time. It takes time for people.
Ironically, I think everyone gets to the same point though, which is probably the best tool we've had for conforming thought processes humanity's ever seen.
Interesting, yeah. You said muted peaks and muted drops. Do you mean that they will be smaller?
Yes. So instead of having a 2000% blow off top where it just goes vertical, we have call it a 300% blow off top that looks like that. And then instead of dropping 80% or 78% like it typically does, we might see a 30, 40, 50% drop, and that's all we're going to get. And, those guys who are trading, thinking they're going to get an opportunity to buy Bitcoin at an 80% discount from its peak, they're going to be sadly let down that they're not going to get that opportunity. So I think as capital market participation gets bigger, the market capitalization of Bitcoin grows, we're going to see those. It just seems like a logical function of market maturity.
Yeah, this is the saddest thing when I see people saying like, "Oh, I want to buy into Bitcoin, but I'm waiting for a little bit of a lower price," and I'm like, "You might never get there. Like, maybe now, then never."
Well, that's the problem. I had a conversation with a client today who was asking, we've got a few $100,000. What do you recommend? And I said, is this your first Bitcoin purchase? And they said, yeah. I said, well, you put all of that in today. Buy today. Oh, why would you do that? Why not dollar cost average? I said, because you've got no exposure to Bitcoin. That's the problem. If you miss out on this opportunity and it does, Samson Mauser mega candle, while you're sitting on the sideline dollar cost averaging because you're getting too smart by half, you've missed the opportunity. Because once you go down this rabbit hole, you realize that first, no matter how much capital you want to allocate in your first round through, it's never the total amount of capital that you're going to allocate to it. Everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to put a little bit in and then I'll be done. But the more they learn, the more they buy. And so I'm probably fairly aggressive on that front to say, no, put as much as you can afford to lose in straight up front. And then once you start learning about it, once you understand it, once you realize what the potential for this is, you're going to look around at all the other assets that you're holding that are underperforming Bitcoin. You're going to start figuring out what ones you don't want to hold anymore and what you want to transfer into Bitcoin. So to me, this is, I think, a missed opportunity that a lot of people new to Bitcoin really miss out on. That there's always more capital. No one ever puts in, all of their capital into Bitcoin in the first investment. So
it's super interesting. And Samson, I'll still have an interview outstanding with him. He will be on quite soon. But do you think this Omega candle, because you also said about like muted peaks, and it's for me harder and harder to see a thing where I just go to sleep and next day it's like up, I don't know, 100, 200%, like anything crazy like that, because it's just like so much bigger than it was when it actually did that. And it's like, yeah, you need at that point a really big move. Like when we go back to 2020, Square buying $50 million of Bitcoin was a big move. Like this was a big
yeah,
news. Now, if any company buys $50 million of Bitcoin, people are like, yeah, like this happens every day now. Like it's normal. It's like it's not a Tuesday. So I'm kind of wondering, what would it take for something to actually move the market at this point? It's like we already have the USA in Bitcoin. We already have. I mean, they're not actively buying. Maybe that would change things if like Donald Trump says, hey, yeah, like we are wanting to buying $1 million Bitcoin, and we're going ahead with that. So I don't know, what do you think could drastically move Bitcoin? Is there any news, or is it just like over time?
I think we're going to get to a point in time when people realize there's not the amount of Bitcoin out there that people say there is. And this is going to cause a massive spike. And I forget who posted this, but hopefully they get the credit that's due. But what happens when the Bitcoin treasury companies are reporting that they collectively they own 22 million coins?
A guest of mine said it a few weeks ago. Oh gosh, I forgot who. I forgot who, but it was not a long time ago. I have to look it up. Maybe I'll put it in the description because someone of my guests said, "What happens when all the Bitcoin Treasury companies combines are like, yeah, we have now 22 million Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Treasury is like, how the heck is that possible?"
You know, how long are those shareholders going to remain shareholders? They're going to sell their stock and they're going to go buy Bitcoin,
Yeah,
which is
like
going to add further pressure to what those Bitcoin treasury companies are reporting. And so, as funny as this is to think of, I just love that as a thought experiment. That will happen in time at some point in time, and yeah, that is absolutely going to happen. And yeah, we're going to see who's been swimming naked.
that's why we need self custody, and you have to have your own key.
Simple.
Really cool. I have one question to ask each and every one of my returning guests. And the question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last appearance on the podcast?
Question. I'd say that it's never as good and it's never as bad as you think it is, regardless of what you're thinking about.
This is so true. This is so true. Oh gosh. No, there's a lot of things that I'm thinking about now that I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that's very true. Because you sometimes hear like really good news and then you're like, okay, there was this and this small detail to it that makes it not that good. And then you hear really bad news and you're like, oh yeah, like that's not that bad. Like it's bad, but it's not that bad. So that's very, very, very true. Did you get to know about that through personal experience or
Maybe, maybe. I'm
maybe?
still thinking about the first conversation we had where you put me on the spot with that horrible question. Who's going to win the US election and why? I was like, what sort of question is that?
Oh, you got a good one today too.
Yeah, I did. I've got a great one.
Oh no, we have as the question was the end routine question. I think it was like about Trump. It was crazy.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was, I think it was who's going to win the US election. And I might have commented that I thought it would be very polarizing that Trump would win if he survived long enough. And then he had two assassination attempts. So it was
this was just
quite poignant.
crazy. Yeah, you called it. You called it. But we have an end routine, and this is where in the first, I think the first episode this came out. The question came from the previous guest, and today's end routine is as always, where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is, and it's also an interesting question, but not as controversial, I think. What do you believe is true that actually isn't?
That's a very good question.
I have
Probably some light humor on this. For a long time, and even if asked, I think the toilet paper should be put over on top so that when you spin it round, it falls to the ground because you want the top pulled out. But I actually think if you've got a dog, you'll understand that you never leave the toilet paper like that. And that was one of the things that I actually had to change my opinion on. Even though logically I still like it over the top because the dog's there and wants to wind the toilet paper off the roll. It actually works much better if you put it under. So when the dog flips the reel, it stays on the reel and it doesn't fall to the ground.
What?
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe I have different things, but like it rolls down either side.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
if you put the toilet roll on top and pull it down, if you keep rolling it like that, it'll all spool off. But if you put it under and you spool down like that, it will never unroll. It'll just keep going round and round in circles.
Interesting. Oh gosh. Yeah, I never thought about that.
Yeah, get a dog, you'll figure it out.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.